vegetation. All right, this is a very interesting slide. The Tolowa Indians of the northern coast of California call the California condor Tilangwicha, which means whale lifter. And interestingly enough, the first record of a California condor sighting was made by a Jesuit priest in the Monterey Bay Area in 1602. And he recorded that sighting as condors feeding on a whale carcass along with some grizzly bears. Of course, that would give a totally different meaning to a beach walk, wouldn't it? Yeah. I'd reconsider where I took my honey if that was going to be the case. But it's conceivable that one day an Indian could see condors feeding on a carcass on the beach, and the next day could have gone out with the tide, and of course they would just assume that condors carried it off. This picture right here are California condors that were bred in captivity and released on the central California coast 405 years after that 1602 record by that Jesuit priest in the same area of Monterey Bay, feeding on a whale. That's very, very encouraging. The Western Mono Indians called Condor Wutsun, which means catch little boys asleep. And in the ethno record, there's a lot of stories of condors carrying people away and even kidnapping people. The Western Monos have a story where a man was out with his family, was collecting sage seeds, and he fell asleep, and the condor took him away up into the sky on his back and flew away with him, and he was never seen again. So you got to wonder if those early North Americans suffered from insomnia. You know, I think I would. Every time I fell asleep, I had to worry about being carried away by a condor. All right. This is probably the most famous condor pictograph. It's in Condor Pig, Los Padres National Forest. The red ochre right there, obviously, is the head, and the white is the wings and feet. But anyway, for thousands and thousands of years, the condors ruled the skies and captured the imagination of Native Americans throughout their range. And the obvious evidence are in these pictographs, and I'll show you a couple more. This is a stylized pictograph right here. Most of it you'll see look more like this one. You can see a man's body in red, and then the white condor wing, and then the ceremonial headdress. And most of the paintings were a representative of some type of condor ceremonial procession. And they're even seen in like on antique baskets, like this Pohila antique basket. So there's this evidence throughout the various cultures that are still available to us. Interestingly enough, there's currently a debate right now on what to do with these pictographs, because weather and time, we're losing them. And so the question is, do we doctor them up so we don't lose them, which would compromise them, or do we just let them fade out with time and just have pictures to remember them by? It's an interesting question. It's a dilemma that I don't have to deal with, but it's a reality. They didn't do petroglyphs throughout that. Okay. So anyway, back to Mr. Condor. Condor was both omnipotent and omnipresent to the native cultures. It was everything and everywhere. Condor played many, many roles. He was an ancestral chief, he was a shaman, he was a healer, he was a sorcerer, a messenger, a finder of lost objects. On the flip side, he was also a kidnapper, a robber, a gambler, and a killer. In fact, one of the earliest stories comes from the Yuman Indians of Southern California. And that story, it's the Condor Catalina Island story. And Catalina's island off the southern coast of southern Arizona, if you're not familiar with that landscape. And the story goes like this. It says that Condor, way back in ancient times, had a rancheria on Catalina Island, a village. And it was full of women. And these women were women that he kidnapped from the mainland and took out to the island. And it says that over time that these women would grow old and bald and obtain feathers just like a California condor. It actually goes on to say also too that at night Condor turned into a man. So I don't know what Mr. Condor was up to. It sounds pretty shaky to me. The story goes on to say that Condor wasn't thinking, and he made a mistake, and he kidnapped a young boy, and took him to the island. I don't know what he was thinking when he did that, but it was a big mistake, because that kid figured out that every day, just like this California condor, Condor would land on his favorite perch, and he would rest in between his kidnappings. And so one day, the youth snuck up on Condor, threw rocks and stoned him until he killed him. After which, of course, the women were able to escape the island, go back to the mainland, and they say that after a long period of time, they grew their hair back and they lost their feathers, and they were able to return to their villages. But anyway, that's the Condor Catalina story, which portrays Condor as a kidnapper. Okay. Condor is also described in stories and myths. And one of my favorite is the Chumash Rainbow Bridge story. And within that Rainbow Bridge story, the Chumash tell how Condor got his color. Anyway, the Chumash claim that the original Chumash came from Santa Cruz Island, from the seeds of a magic plant that was planted by Hutash, Earth Goddess, and that Hutash, Earth Goddess, was married to Sky Snake, who was the Milky Way. And that Sky Snake had the particular talent of being able to throw lightning bolts from his tongue. Well, the story also says that this was so long ago that this was the time before fire. And one day, Hutash and Sky Snake are up in the sky, and they happen to notice the poor Chumash down on Santa Cruz Island, and they're shivering and they're cold because they don't have any fire. And so Sky Snake decided that he would do them a favor. And he shot a lightning bolt out of his tongue down to Santa Cruz Island, and the Chumash had fire for the very first time. Of course, they were extremely grateful, and they kept the fire going. And so, anyway, you're wondering, well, what does this have to do with Condor's color? Well, the Chumash believed, or they maintained, that back in those days, Condor was an all-white bird. And that one day, Condor was flying around, and he saw fire for the very first time after the Chumash had received it from Sky Snake, the Milky Way. And Condor's inherently being very nosy, and I know this to be very true, started circling around the fire. And he kept circling over the fire, and he couldn't figure out what it was, so he kept flying a little bit lower and a little bit lower, and he just couldn't help himself. He just got down so low that he singed all his feathers in the fire, and it turned him black. Except for the white under the underwings that wasn't exposed to the fire. So that's why the Chumash say the condor is a black and white bird today. Now, the story goes on to say that with fire, the Chumash became very, very comfortable. And you can imagine what happens when you have a bunch of very comfortable naked people. Well, they multiplied, and they multiplied on Santa Cruz Island, and they got very, very loud, right? Hutash couldn't sleep. She's up there with Sky Snake going, man, you made a mistake. So she says, okay, I've got to disperse some of these Chumash, so I'm going to take them and put them on the mainland. The only problem was that there was no bridge from Santa Cruz Island to the mainland. So Hutash built a bridge out of a rainbow. and he told the Chumash to cross the Rainbow Bridge to the mainland. And they did just that.